Oh, you've got the colours in the background. I'm very impressed.
It's always lovely to start the webinar with lots of hellos, which is always good. And I think that's a real sign of the Scotens community. So I think it's a lovely way to start, and it's a real gathering. It's almost like we're in person. We're making the virtual as real as possible, which is great. I'm just keeping an eye on the attendees. So there's lots of people after popping in. So I think we'll get started. And to welcome you all this evening. My name is Julia Kostela, and it's my honour and privilege to open the research webinar this evening. I'm the Southern co-chair of Scotens, and delighted to be joined by so many speakers, so many members of the Scotens committee, and most importantly, members of the Scotens community, North and South. So at the outset, I'd just like to thank a few people. Not going to do a full Oscars speech. It is that season, but it is important just to say a few thank yous, really to everybody who's made this evening possible, and all of the preparation that has gone into the event. So a particular thank you to all of our speakers who are gathered here today. To the many Scotens committees and subcommittees who have all worked to make sure that tonight happens. To our funders, very important. We're always very, very appreciative to our funders that help the works of Scotens go from strength to strength each year. To Patricia Kelly, in particular, from the Centre of Cross-Border Studies and the team in Cross-Border Studies, who always support us so well and help keep us all on track. As I was thinking about this evening's session, and saying, now I need to say something quite meaningful. So I did what all people do, and I start scrolling through my phone for inspiration. And I came across a photo that I took that was part of a community photography exhibition in Washington. And I can still remember that intense heat, but I remember being stopped on my walk through Washington when I saw this poem. And it's very short, it's only 3 lines, and I'm going to read it for you. It said, "Your side, my side of the border, sharing backyard birds." And tonight we are celebrating our shared border and the richness that comes with living, working, and researching on a shared island. And we certainly do share backyard birds, but we share so much more than that. And tonight I really look forward to hearing about our shared cross-border research projects, our shared commitment to education that binds us all and why we're all here, and our shared drive for social justice, for care, and for compassion, things that are so important in our world at the moment. And above all, I suppose, our shared endeavours to learn from and with each other in this very special and very unique research community that we're all part of. There will be 4 parts to tonight's event, and we will finish by 8:15. So just so we're keeping an eye on the clock as well. But we'll get 4 different sections into that hour and a quarter. And we'll start by hearing from 3 research teams who have completed Scotens funded projects, and we'll hear their stories, their voices. We'll then officially launch our annual report. We'll then announce the recipients of the very prestigious John Coollahan Award. And finally, we'll have a question and answer session on the seed funding scheme. And we really hope that all of this will inspire you to engage with the cross-border research project funded by Scotens, or maybe to re-engage if it's something that's been on your to-do list for a little while. Maybe tonight we'll push it back up to the top of that list. So I'm now going to hand over to my Scotens Committee colleague, Dr. Shauna McGill, from the School of Education in Ulster University. And Shauna will introduce some of the inspiring and thought-provoking research projects funded by Scotens that have been undertaken over the past while. So Shauna, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening, everyone, and you're very welcome along to the 2024 Scotens Research Webinar event. One of the aims of Scotens has always been to support collaborative research across the island of Ireland. Over the last 21 years, our seed funding initiative has empowered researchers, both north and south, to collaborate on social science research which has been an innovative and pivotal influence upon national and international teacher education practice. As a Scotens committee team, we see the opportunities that both the seed funding and the Shared Island Initiative has afforded practitioners to engage in meaningful educational research that seeks to clarify, illustrate and query policy and procedure, as well as deliver impactful positive change upon schools, teachers, parents, community, and moreover, children and young people. So throughout this evening's programme, you'll hear from a very successful researchers that have utilised a wide range of research methodologies and have explored very pertinent educational issues. Hopefully this will inspire you to engage in a funding application that will ignite a collaborative project that significantly impacts upon your discipline. We are particularly encouraging anyone who has never applied for the Scotens seed funding, or perhaps who is an early career researcher and sees this as an opportunity to network with education colleagues from other institutions. So therefore, for the next half hour, I am very excited to introduce a wide range of funding recipients who will give us some insights into the nature of their projects and their impactful outcomes. We will find out about three main elements, hopefully, through their presentations of their projects. And the first element we want them really to focus on is who was involved in the project, and the second of which, what were the main cross-border activities that the project funding enabled, and then finally we are encouraging the speakers to reflect openly on the learning gains that each partner achieved as a result of engaging in the project. So without further ado, I will hand over to the very first of our speakers, TJ, and hopefully TJ, you are ready to go, and Gabrielle as well. So at this point, I'll hand over to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. So TJ and I are in different countries at the moment. So we had a chat about this and agreed that I will kick off, and then TJ will come in to talk about our project. So TJ and I were working for 2 years between 2021 to 2023 on a project that was focused on Irish medium education, and we conducted an analysis of the immersion-specific competences of the Irish medium teacher. And you may think that that should have been already carried out, but actually 50 years into immersion education in the north of Irish and twice that long in the south of Ireland, actually that was never done on a research-informed way. And so the teachers had not had the status and the credibility given to them by having that conducted. So therefore, TJ and I have thought about tonight, like with you, yourselves in mind, coming on here, thinking about submitting an application where we were a couple of years ago, and we have kept the focus of our talk tonight on that point where you are just considering making your application. So we have decided to, if we could move on maybe to the next slide, we have decided to focus on three aspects of the application process. And three aspects of it that we find to be critical, really. Firstly, well, looking at the idea or the ideas, the possible ideas, and getting that right. And secondly, the partners. Scotens is all about relationships, and getting the team right. That too is critical. So we'll talk about that for a little. And then TJ will come in and he will talk about the importance of really getting to know the work and the principles of Scotens, and preferably before you start writing your application. Have a little tip written down there at the bottom. Don't forget about the matching service that's available on the website and is very useful. And I noticed that there's already 4, maybe there's more now, but certainly yesterday there were 4, and I wanted to match up with them. they looked really great. So you can get possible partners there if you have maybe an idea, or maybe you have no idea but you'd like to get involved. So talking about the possible ideas, therefore, if we move on therefore to the next slide. Our idea, TJ and I, our idea was, what is the distinctive knowledge base, the distinctive skill base of the Irish medium teacher? What was common in our research was that all of the participants were of the very strong conviction that the skills and the knowledge and the values that were essential to them, that they were very distinctive. They may be, already important in the mainstream, broader educational sector, but in the Irish medium sector, they were essential. Now, that kind of emerged from our long-standing involvement with Irish medium, with our own professional lives in the Irish medium sector. So the idea came from our own work, our own commitment to the sector. It kind of just came along. It was easy for us. 3 decades on after working in Irish medium education, both of us began as Irish medium teachers ourselves. And we arrived, having been involved as teachers and as leaders and in different parts of the sector, we arrived at this point in our professional lives where we were stunned by the fact that no one had actually put down on paper, supported by research, what are we expecting of our teachers? So this was the point that we'd arrived at. And the question just came along like as the obvious next stage for us to tackle in a research context. So it may not be so easy and so obvious for you. You may have to think more strategically as to what are the important initiatives now? What are the priorities of the Department of Education? What are the priorities of parents? In your own professional lives in schools and in higher education, what is it that you know to be important? Or what are your own skills, your own areas of expertise that you would like to take further within the context of research? You may have to think through all of those things. For us, as I say, it kind of just came along in an easy enough way, but that doesn't always happen. So choose the topic that you consider to be important, to be relevant. And where you think that you can make a difference, where it will have strategic value, and a topic that you can remain passionate about for whatever length of time that your project is planned to last for, because that is going to make it easy, and you will carry through to the end in that way. So my little tip for the end of this slide is read the reports of previous projects. Go onto Scotens' website, you'll see all the other projects in the archives, you'll get great ideas, and you'll see what works, what doesn't work. So now I'll move on to the partnerships. Putting your team together. And the success of Scotens depends upon professional relationships, people getting on. Relationships are just woven through the fabric of the Scotens organisation, and the seed funding projects are one excellent example of this. Now, in the case of TJ and I, we had worked together on academic programmes and in academic contexts. We had worked together in very broad research contexts with lots of other people, and we hadn't worked together as a small team. But our paths had crossed due to common interests, and it again just became there was a point of time where our common interests brought us together. So it was an easy decision to, it was, you're interested in this, I'm interested in this, let's do this, and that's how it kind of came about. But there is not one blueprint for how to do this, and the question does arise. Is it best to work with, a small team, like 2 people, or should there be, a broader team? Is it more strategic to have a broader team with more involvement right across different institutions. And really, you'll have to consider all of those factors for yourselves as to you know how they how they impact upon your project. As I say, in our case, it worked for us, this particular configuration, and it worked maybe partly because we were working within a relatively small area. Irish medium education is still relatively small, and within our particular study, we had a relatively broad and a very, very dynamic range of representation from right across the sector. So the participants were very representative, and that kind of balanced the fact that there were two lead researchers. So that actually was one of the strengths of the project. So you'll have to just see what works best for you, and don't think that there's only one way, because there's not. But one question you might like to just consider is, and we did not consider this, and thankfully, you know, we weren't caught up by it. But what if one person had to pull out for a while? What if one person was sick for a while? You know, we didn't think about that, and thankfully, it didn't cause us any trouble. But it might have. So you may need a risk assessment kind of approach to it there. So TJ now will step in and talk about the alignment with Scotens values.
Good morning, Gabriel, and good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to join you this evening and to see so many familiar faces, and to share our insights and our experiences of our Scotens project. I'd like to talk about the principles of Scotens, and I suppose how we aligned our project with those principles, and how it was our aspiration when we were obviously crafting the application, but it became a reality during the project. So first of all, as you can see there, we have all the former themes, the conference themes from Scotens. So it's very good for you to familiarize yourself with the principles of Scotens, and to ensure that your project aligns with them, and to examine maybe conference themes, previous conference themes, and also, as Gabriel said earlier, you know, the research endeavors for guidance for your own application. And share, what I'd like to do now is just share the rationale and discuss how our project aligned with the principles of Scotens. So as Gabriel alluded to there earlier, we had a shared enterprise and a common focus and a vested interest in our topic, obviously. And scholars for years have agreed that immersion teaching, that is the teaching of academic content through an additional language, is driven by professional values and requires a particular knowledge base and a pedagogical skill set. But however, as Gabriel said earlier, to date, few studies identify those immersion-specific competencies demanded by the immersion setting. So our Scotens research project identified these essential immersion-specific values, knowledge domains, and pedagogical practices from an all-Ireland Irish medium immersion educator perspective. And we use a variety of sources, individual interviews, a student teacher symposium, focus groups, an extensive online questionnaire to collect the data. And it was, I suppose, from various key stakeholders across the continuum of Irish medium education, north and south. For example, student teachers became participants, practicing teachers and principals, head teachers at primary and post-primary, inside and outside the Gaeltacht, and also initial teacher educators from a variety of initial teacher education or teacher education institutions even. So how did we align our topic with the principles of Scotens? Well, first of all, we worked in partnership with immersion professionals across the continuum, and there was a real focus on immersion teacher education and with the promotion of children's learning as the ultimate objective. So therefore, our project was very much rooted in the deepest commitment to quality teaching and learning for all. And this was our sat-nav. This was our shining light, our Northern Star throughout the project. So our project also provided a forum for teacher educators, including ourselves, and the wider education community across the island of Ireland to engage in open, critical and constructive analysis of current issues in immersion education, with a view to promoting a collaborative response to these issues. And when we worked with teacher educators, we conducted a series of focus groups with them, and they reported that these meetings or these sharing of ideas are generating of knowledge exchange, maybe, that they view these as professional development experiences for them, because it's not often teacher educators and immersion teacher educators get an opportunity to discuss their craft with colleagues, and indeed to seek solutions together. Also, we designed the project here to inspire and indeed support student teachers, experienced practitioners, leaders, and researchers also. So we were very much developing as researchers through our interactions with our participants also. And it was quite enlightening to work with such a dynamic community. And it also nurtured positive relationships and partnerships across jurisdictions, and this has proven to be sustainable. And this sustaining of these North-South partnerships is really, really important. Again, teacher educators have built those connections and are sustaining those connections, as well as school connections north and south of the border. From the start, we had a dissemination plan to maximize the impact of our research efforts. So it's really important that you think about that from the outset. Think about how your project will advance knowledge, how it will create awareness of a particular issue, how it has potential to inform policy and practice, but also, and most importantly, how it will empower and sustain your community. In our case, it was the immersion educator community, North and South. For example, we've presented at numerous national and international conferences, and we also have published in peer-reviewed journals. We have some other papers under review, and some are at the planning stage. So that dissemination of the project is really, really important. And then just to finish up by talking about the final slide, and it's very much, this project that we crafted initially was very much poised to enhance the quality, accessibility and sustainability of Irish medium education by leveraging our collective expertise, by leveraging resources we collectively had, but also by advocacy efforts across both regions. So what were our key learnings from this? Number one is you need time, and you need to plan time. You need to find time. You need to be strategic with your time, because the amount, as we all know, admin hoovers up your time. You need time, a time frame to get a budget approved, to get ethics approved. You need time for data collection, because we are all working and we have other responsibilities. You need time for data analysis, but very, very importantly, you need to factor in time for write-up. And we're so busy ensuring that progress is happening, that data is getting collected, that there's analysis going on, that sometimes we're time poor when it comes up to the write-up of our project. So it's really, really important that you bask in the glory of that write-up, and that you give yourself plenty of time to do a really comprehensive write-up on your project. So the bit of advice that we have there is embrace deadlines as allies, because they are there to help you. The second thing that we've learned is really, and again, Gabriel alluded to it earlier, resilience and adaptability are key. Research is a multifaceted and complex process, so that action plan is really, really critical to keep you on the straight and narrow. Sometimes you'll meander off that journey, but however, you can come back, be resilient, adapt that action plan, who was doing what by when, and it will set you back on track again. So I have to say that Gabriel is an artist at crafting action plans and making sure that those action plans actually come into fruition as well. So the last learning from this is very much engage in networking and relationship building. And Scotens is a really valuable forum and a really powerful forum to do this, to expand your professional network, to establish relationships with peers, which could potentially lead to further collaborations and future collaborations and opportunities. So this webinar is maybe it's a platform from which you'd like to start. to engage with Scotens conferences, to engage with other reports from and other Scotens collaborations also, so to lead you on that way and to ensure that your aspirations of putting together a proposal really does become a reality. So we wish you the best of luck with your application, and we hope that our key learnings have been of some support to your thinking for that process. Gurmila Maga.
Thank you, TJ and Gabrielle, for your very insightful information with regard to your project, and I'm sure we have inspired lots of our listeners this evening to get engaged with similar projects. But at this point, I'd like to move quite swiftly on. I'm just conscious of time to our second presenters of the evening, and I'd like to introduce, please, Dr. Jill Dunn, Senior Lecturer from Stranmillis University College Belfast, and Dr. Jean Meehan, from Vice President of Education and Strategic Development of the Marine Institution in Dublin.
Thank you very much, Shauna, and thank you very much to the Scotens Committee for inviting Jean and myself to talk about our seed funding project. So Jean and I, we were working from a 6-minute brief, so we're going to be quite short, and we have decided to break it up into the following couple of areas. Jean's going to give a little bit of an overview of the team and the project, and I'm going to speak very briefly then just about what I gained professionally from engaging in the seed funding project, and a little bit of advice if we can squeeze it in at the end for those who are thinking of submitting. So I'll hand over to Jean first.
Thank you, Jill. And yeah, just to reiterate, we are working from 2 minutes that we revised in each one, so we won't have slides, but we will give an overview as much as possible to give a flavour of our research. The name of our project was Interactive Apps and Narrative Writing, and under the, I suppose, the idea of a Scotens funded research, where you're urged to find a partner north and south who can work with you locally. I was delighted to be found by Dr. Jill Dunn, who came to me with a proposal on this project. Jill is a senior lecturer in Stranmillis, and like myself has a background and an interest in literacy achievement, especially at early years in primary school. And Jill, having completed, I suppose, previously on research on writing using iPads and tablets with primary school teachers, she came to me with a proposal to look at the potential effect of using Amazon Alexa app, The Magic Door, with primary school children to co-create oral stories. These children, 2 schools in Belfast, 2 schools in Dublin, who would actually from disadvantaged areas and would be focusing on children in primary 4 and 2nd class in the Republic, reluctant writers in social disadvantaged settings. The children were, that was particularly resonated with me. My previous research would have been on reluctant readers and motivating reluctant readers. So that was the background of the project. We would look in 2 different settings of reluctant writers in disadvantaged settings. The research questions that we worked on were to ascertain the views of these young children in areas of social advantage on their enjoyment, engagement in writing generally, on their use of digital tools in writing in and out of school, and then the particular use of this Alexa Amazon Magic Door in co-creating stories. And then we also looked and ascertained the views of teachers on their perception of children's enjoyment, engagement in writing, and their views of children using digital schools as well. And ultimately, how they found the potential of using the Magic Door app in helping children to develop skills in creating oral and written stories. That's a whistle-stop tour of what we set out to do. I would have some advice at the end maybe, and I hope, Jill, that resonates correctly with our project.
Absolutely, yes, a lovely overview. And I'm just going to speak very briefly about what I've gained professionally from working in a seed funding project for those who are thinking about submitting an application. So I think in terms of the professional learning, I think firstly, the seed funding project is quite small. It's £3,000 to £6,000. But it does allow for some quite focused learning from north and south, and particularly from my perspective, very familiar with our own curriculum in the north of Ireland and literacy in the early years, and having that opportunity to learn a little bit more about another curriculum, literacy curriculum in the south, I think is really valuable. You're learning about a different schooling system as well. So I was working with year 3 children, and that is equivalent equivalent to first class in the south. So you're learning about a different education system, and I think that's a really valuable bit of learning. The second thing, I think, is that development of the professional relationships. So I had met Jane briefly at the Literacy Association of Ireland conference a few years ago, and that just gave me an opportunity to approach him, because I knew that would be something, perhaps the project would be something he'd be interested in. So I think that that building of professional relationships is really important. And I have worked also with Tony Sweeney from Maynooth in a previous seed funding project, and I think that, you know, the goal of Scotens is that safe space for teacher educators to come together with a shared interest. And that is just a really wonderful aspect of the seed funding project. Thirdly, something we're always thinking about is publication. So even though the seed funding project is quite small scale, it does give that possibility to move from the report on to a conference paper, which we did last year at the ESI conference. And then hopefully, in the pipeline, hopefully soon, sooner rather than later, we will get hopefully a publication, a journal article written around this as well. So I think that's really important. And the fourth bit of learning, I think, is that research-led teaching. We're all teacher educators working with students. We're all doing research-led teaching, and it's wonderful if we can bring our own bit of research into that teaching. I think students value that. I think they value being taught by tutors who are involved in research, and they can bring that personal research to it. So again, that's a bit of a brief overview, but I think there is a lot to be gained professionally from engaging in the seed funding project. And the last little bit that Jean and I are both going to talk about, I'm going to give my little bit first, is advice for those who are thinking of submitting a proposal. And I know Gabrielle and TJ touched on this. So my perspective, my little bit of advice is, and I think I'm repeating what perhaps TJ mentioned, is looking at the aims of the project. And there are, in the application form, it does talk about, you know, how can you build on what's already known? How can you contribute to the field? So I think if you can bash that out before you fill in the application form and really think, what am I bringing that's a little bit different? It doesn't have to be huge, but is it a slightly different perspective? Is it a slightly different way of looking at things? So if you can bash that out, what is new and what can this research bring that's different? I think that's what the research or the Scotens committee are probably looking for. And Jane, I'll hand over to you for your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Jill. And I think actually, and thank you to TJ and Gabrielle, they gave plenty of advice there that we can build on. I think specifically, and I'm not sure who mentioned it, but you to be passionate about what you're doing is a help in any bit of research, number one. But to actually get attainable and manageable goals and research aims, that's really, really important. One thing that I would say, maybe a bit of advice, and maybe it was pertinent to our own project, is that in I am disseminating, the most obvious place you can disseminate is where your research site is. And one of the things that I built in very early on, and you might call it a bribe or dissemination, but I said to both schools that, listen, if we get access to your school, I promise we will actually give a report on what we're doing back to staff, and an added bit of CPD as well. Now you can call that bribery, professional bribery, or actually dissemination, but it worked really, really well. It meant the staff were informed what was going on. They looked forward to hearing about it. And I think that idea then of the creep from the project into the school was really, really apparent and very effective. So maybe if you can actually manage to get your dissemination early, and then as Jill said, it might reach to publication later on. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill and Jean. Again, very insightful projects, and I've learned an awful lot about the professional library. I must definitely use that moving forward. Okay, so that leaves me then to introduce our very last speaker, and my very esteemed colleague, I have to say, is Dr. Maria Campbell, the Director of Graduate Programmes at the Atlantic Technological University in St Angela's in Sligo. You're very welcome, Maria.
Shauna, thanks very much, and thanks to my other colleagues as well. A lot of what I'm saying actually has been covered so well by the previous four speakers, so I'll fly through it quite briefly for you. I've structured it again under, I'd say, 3 areas. One, what was the project we did? Why did we do it? And actually, how do we go about it? What was it? Secondly, what was the professional learning from it? What was the professional gain? And then perhaps some insights or some, I suppose, some recommendations or some suggestions to people who might be thinking of going it. What did we learn and how could maybe that help you somewhat? So Tricia, can I go on to the second slide? Because this is us. This was Peter and myself, my colleague Peter Stevenson from St. Mary's University College. Peter has retired since. So this was both of us at a conference when we were actually delighted to present our work. Peter's background was geography and business, and my own was sociology. So there were some areas of compatibility, etc. I'll come to it on the final slide. I'd never met Peter before. I didn't know him, but I reached out to a colleague, to colleagues in the north, in the various institutions, and said, would there be somebody you think who'd be like-minded, who might work with me? They recommended Peter. We met up and we decided, yes, we could work together. So Tricia, on to the next one then, please. Thank you. Briefly, what was our project? We were looking at the idea that in both jurisdictions, our classrooms were becoming much more culturally diverse. And this wasn't reflected in the teaching populations, which I think isn't unique to the island of Ireland. It is quite synonymous or quite common across the globe. So we decided we'd design a critical media literacy intervention, 8 hours, in an assessed module. And we placed it in both colleges in post-primary BEds in year 3. So the intervention was absolutely the same, delivered over 8 one-hour sessions. And when we said media, we were speaking about everything, about artifacts, language, text, images, movies, and so on. And why did we want to do this? Because ultimately, we wanted to help, I suppose, to critique our own practice, to see, could we in some way develop critically sensitive teachers, being cognizant of what were the local contextual factors. You know, would we have to do something slightly different in the north and the south? So basically, we actually had the same intervention, and our critique was, you know, what could we learn from that? How do we have to tweak it? What influence did the contextual factors have? So Tricia, we're on to the next one. Thank you. I won't go in detail. Just we teased out our theoretical framework, 3 areas. And I suppose we were coming from the idea that, you know, our student teachers in the main, and of the north it was slightly different, but in the main, they were representative of the majority. So therefore, the notion of cultural imperialism and Schul's circle of privilege. So therefore, the outward gaze is the deficit or the issue or the problem is seen with the other, who is in need of being fixed or helped to become like the majority. Within that teacher identity development, you know, the notion that your beliefs as a teacher influence your actions. And finally, transformative learning, based on Mazarow's idea that, you know, if you position or place somebody in a situation where it's slightly disorientating, it kind of challenges them to think differently. You know, are they forced to reconsider their views? And then we went on to Slavich and Zambad, various ones looking at the different phases of transformative learning. Intervention took place before school placement, and then we gathered the data afterwards. So how do we gather it? Focus groups. And again, our numbers were really large. They surprised us. We had more than we thought. We had 24 came forward in Northern Ireland and 28 in the south. So we had over 50%, nearly 70% in the north and about 50% in the south. And our own researchers, we had reflective journals throughout. Tricia, we're moving on. Findings. Again, very quickly, heightened awareness. Yes, absolutely. They recognise their own positioning and so on. Their identity changed, development, their identity developed. They saw teacher had a role beyond academic as care, so on, create a safe space. Transformative learning to some degree, yes, in relation to language, but really interestingly, particularly in the students in Northern Ireland, students with the notion of people with disabilities were still seen somewhat from a charitable perspective. So that was kind of an outlier. We didn't see a similar occurrence in the south. There were other differences in the south that we didn't see in the north. So the learning was huge. And as you'd expect, the local historical, political contexts were highly influential. So I'll move on. I'm just conscious of the time for you. What do we gain? Again, I'm reiterating what was said already. You know, having that opportunity to speak with other people, to go to St. Mary's in the north, to kind of look at their BEd, to unpack it. And again, I suppose the theme of the project reflected very much for us too are taken for granted. This is the way we do it. Oh my gosh, you do it differently. Oh, so the learning from that was absolutely huge. Having access to student teachers in another jurisdiction was great. Hugely for, again, the honesty of the participants. I think because in a sense, Peter gathered the data from the students in the south. I gathered data from the students in the north. And when we reflected, we both said we couldn't believe they were so honest with the other person. And to be honest, that was really humbling. I found that particularly humbling from them. It really forced us to critique our own practice from the lens of another jurisdiction. That was really helpful. How are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Are we questioning that? Should that be done differently? Had we considered it? I found that really, really helpful. Got to present at conferences, one in Ireland, one international, and delighted. It took about 3 years, but we finally got a publication in a peer review article. So it was published last year. Delighted to get that. So a huge amount of benefit for you if you're considering this. These are all possibilities for you. And finally, Tricia, I'm on to the last slide. So if you're considering, this was some of the learning that we took from it. Again, I would say reach out to people in your own jurisdiction, in your own institution, and say, like, do you know somebody? Could there be somebody? In my instance, it was by chatting to colleagues in Stranmillis and in St. Mary's, in UU and in Queen's, and they suggested other people that would help. Secondly, don't be overly ambitious. Again, you've spoken about that before earlier, that don't take on too much because, again, your workload is quite big. But really see, what do you think is feasible? What could you do in the time, etc. Again, ask yourselves, what can we gain from this? What can we do? Can we expand our networks? Maybe we could actually reach out to, another institution. We could reach out to networks, to schools, and that the scope to grow and the scope to develop in this is really, really huge. Again, I think, Jean, you were the person who said it, like, what insights will your research bring to the wider educational community? I mean, what benefits can come from what you're doing to that? What additional knowledge can you bring? Jill, you mentioned it as well, like, what's there already? What are you adding to it? And then dissemination, how can you best facilitate? Should we reach out to schools? Should we reach out to where? What is that? And really, I think, to me, the final one was huge. Like, how can you create a safe space where conversations with your colleagues can be had? How can you invite people into that? And the final one is, our regrets, what we didn't do. What the student teacher said to us, they would have loved to, I said, we'd have loved to have met the students from the other jurisdiction. The fact they said they knew each other's, they were doing the intervention, and we'd intended putting in a submission the following year. For a number of reasons, we didn't. But I think while myself and Peter really engaged, bringing groups of people from different jurisdictions together in some way, be online or virtually or face-to-face, was huge. So we'd have loved to have done that had we had that opportunity. And that was it. So Shauna, I'll finish up with that there. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share. And I wish everybody the best if you're thinking of doing it. I can't urge you strongly enough to do it.
Thank you so much, Maria. And to all my speakers tonight in your presentations, I'm sure we're very grateful for the content of your projects and of course the very positive impact they have had in our communities across the island of Ireland. So at this point, I will hand back to Maria, who's going to introduce our next speaker and a very good colleague of mine, Professor Linda Clark.
Thanks very much, Shauna. It gives me, and I can only say it, absolutely immense pleasure to introduce Professor Linda Clark, Emeritus Professor from Ulster University. Linda was a previous Northern co-chair of Scotens, has been a guiding light in Scotens over the years, is an active researcher, has been a wonderful colleague, and I think in the Scotens family we would consider a really, really good friend. So I'm inviting Linda to launch our annual report, and it's wonderful to see you here again tonight. Linda, sincere thanks, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's almost embarrassing there. Is this me at all? Anyway, I think it is. And thank you, Maria, and thank you, Gabrielle, for inviting me to come along to launch the annual report in its 20th anniversary year of Scotens. And I was very sorry indeed to have missed the Scotens conference. I'd succumbed to a health issue, and thankfully I'm on the mend. I clearly missed a really interesting and excellent conference, but the annual report allowed me to take a look into a whole box of delights, and I want to mention a few of those just now. Firstly, I'm delighted to hear that Scotens continues to thrive in a world where collaborative learning across borders is arguably even more important than ever. And I know Scotens has faced its own challenges over time in what we viewed wryly at the time as its turbulent teenage years. But with Northern Ireland funding restored, I'm delighted that Dr. Brown was there present to open the conference. Professor Teresa Cremon's keynote address focused on developing reading teachers and used a social justice lens, which is an approach which has been a recurring viewpoint really through many of our conferences. And her challenges to the audience focused on how all teachers, and not just English teachers, can encourage reading for pleasure. And this reminded me of a book which I'm currently reading with very great pleasure indeed, by Professor Kathleen Lynch. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, who provided a brilliant Scotens keynote a few years ago. That's available on the Scotens website. And this seminal and timely book explores the tensions between care and capitalism, and I really commend it to you as a thought-provoking overview really of important issues around capitalism, capitalist values in society, not just in economies across the world. Then our friend and visiting professor at Ulster, Professor Ian Mentor, offered an in-depth critique of what constitutes teacher education today and going forward, against the backdrop of a selection of international research and seminal texts and ideas put forward by educational theorists and activists alike. And linking to the conference theme, Ian examined the resources for hope within teacher education. How important is that? Providing examples drawn from his research networks across the globe. And he concluded by reminding us of Seamus Heaney's reference to the work of Václav Havel, distinguishing between hope and optimism. Hope is, he said, a state of the soul rather than a response to the evidence. It's not the expectation that things will turn out successfully, but the conviction that something is worth working for, however it turns out. And the academic fathers of Scotens, Professor John Coollahan, Professor Harry McMahon from Ulster, were clearly inspired by such hope. And I was delighted that Andy Pollock, their co-conspirator in that process and co-hoper in setting up Scotens, addressed the conference to provide his own personal history of the organisation and the success of Scotens. The hardworking members of the Scotens committee, and I know how hard they have to work on top of their day job to make Scotens work, are fortunate indeed to have the Centre for Cross-Border Studies support in their work. And right up to this today with Anthony Suarez and Patricia Kelly, who's here tonight. As always, the Scotens conference linked the local to the global. And I'm delighted that, like Rilke, life in Scotens is advancing in widening circles that reach out across the world. And that was evidenced by the final keynote, Professor Joanna Madelinska-Milch-Michalik. I've been looking forward to that one all day, from the University of Warsaw, who helpfully provided a view of Scotens from afar. And she highlighted the value of our conference, but also the cross-border teacher exchange, which had both virtual and face-to-face formats this time around, and also the seed-funded projects. And many of these projects, as we mentioned earlier, have led to publications, and I was particularly delighted to see that a special Scotens-themed edition of the Irish Journal of Education has come out, containing not 8 papers, brilliant, wonderful, from Scotens project, 8 papers from these cross-border projects. Scanning through the list of projects, which is in the report as well, was a journey down memory lane for me, really. And it reminded me and illustrated very strongly, and I commend it to you, how many academic careers across this island have been nurtured and enriched by these cross-border projects. They're the way to go, really, in your career. It's a great way to start, literally seed funding. And nowadays also, thanks to a brilliant initiative initially from Dr. Conor Galvin, we catch the very best researchers even earlier in the process and bring them into Scotens in the doctoral workshop. I like to catch them young. So I'll stop now, but I commend the annual report to you all, and I wish Scotens all the very best for the next 20 years and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you, Kachota.
Okay, at this point then, I will introduce Professor Noel Purdy, Director of Research and Scholarship and Director of the CRU, the Centre for Research and Educational Underachievement, Head of Education Studies at Stranmillis, to announce the award of the John Coonahan Award to the successful seed-funded project.
Thanks very much, Shauna. Good evening, everybody. And it's a real privilege to be here this evening. As well as all those positions I hold at Stranmillis, I'm also, more importantly, chair of the research subgroup of Scotens. And so it's been my pleasure and privilege this year to chair the panel of judges who have read all the contenders for the coveted John Coonahan Award 2024. This award was established in memory of Professor John Coonahan, one of the two founding fathers of Scotens that Linda mentioned just a moment ago, who sadly passed away in June 2018, so 6 years ago already, after a career at the Centre of Education on the island of Ireland that spanned 6 decades. During his lifetime, he was valued nationally and internationally for his unrivaled erudition and his vision of education that was anchored in partnership, pluralism, and equality. Following Professor Coonahan's death, the Scotens Steering Committee, that of course John had been part of for many years, established the Coonahan Award, which is now presented annually to the authors of the seed funding report that is recognised to be most in line with the values and ideals of Scotens. And we've heard about those already. Those values and ideals, let's just remind ourselves, are founded on cross-border encounter, collaboration, sharing, and learning. Indeed, we now have over 20 years experience of this partnership, including well over 100 research projects. So as a panel, we read each of the contenders for this year's award and reflected on their respective strengths as pieces of research, but also in terms of how they aligned very strongly with those values and ideals of the association. This is never an easy task, and I'd like to commend my fellow judges for all the time and energy that they expended in quite a short time frame in reading all those reports over the last few weeks. So thank you, colleagues, for investing that time. This year's winner was the unanimous choice of the judges and impressed us for a number of reasons. There were many strong contenders, I should add, but this one stood out. First of all, it was very well written, well designed, and carefully delivered as a piece of research on a highly relevant and contemporary topic. As one of the judges put it, this report really had everything. Direct contact with initial teacher education students, collaboration between HEIs, North and South, engagement with key stakeholders, North and South, and with clear recommendations for improvement to practice, North and South, all encapsulated in this beautifully written and presented report. Well, I think I'm about to give away who the winner is. And in the report, we are reminded that the Irish medium sector in Ireland, North and South, has over 66,000 pupils enrolled, from 60,000 are in the South and over 6,500 in the North. As the fastest growing sector in Irish education, there are, however, no studies, as we heard earlier, which have explicitly identified the immersion-specific competences demanded by Irish medium education settings. The study therefore set out to identify those necessary competences and then to provide examples of them in practice. The research adopted a mixed methods approach, as we heard, comprising a survey, focus groups with initial teacher education students, and interviews with 8 practicing IME teachers, North and South. 2 focus groups were also conducted with IME principals, the first with 2 Northern and 2 Southern primary heads, the other then with 2 Northern and 2 Southern post-primary heads who came together. A student teacher symposium was also held during an IME conference on the 11th of June 2022. Initial teacher education immersion providers also took part in a focus group. In total, 78 stakeholders participated in the research. So what stood out for us as a panel was the high level of north-south engagement, not just by the researchers, which is common to all the studies, but also by so many of the participants. We as a panel liked that a lot. The results are, of course, fascinating, revealing a highly committed group of Irish medium education practitioners, north and south, but also a group who have to master a wide and uniquely challenging range of competences, including subject knowledge and pedagogy, but also linguistic competence and scaffolding techniques, not to mention the additional challenges posed by the lack of resources and assessment tools and the challenges of staffing in this fast-growing sector. Overall, the study highlights the value of this now completed cross-border research project, but also the enormous potential for future cross-border collaboration in terms of designing and refining that set of Irish medium education teacher competences and an associated teacher professional learning framework. And so after all that, it gives me great pleasure to award the John Coollahan Award for Research Excellence 2024 to, I'm expecting a drum roll at this point, TJ O'Callaghan from University College Cork and Gabriel Nguyen from St Mary's University College in Belfast. And here is your certificate. I hope you can see that, which is now going to make its way across by the miracle of technology, hopefully to you. And I'm sorry I can't present it to you in person and shake your hands, but this is a tremendous piece of work, and congratulations to you both on this wonderful project. And it only remains for me to invite TJ and Gabriel just to say maybe a few more words. I know you've told us a lot about the project already, but perhaps just highlighting what you enjoyed most about this project for the next couple of minutes. So well done. Congratulations on behalf of Scotens as worthy winners of the 2024 John Coollahan Award. And I'll pass you over now to TJ and Gabriel for just a few words in response. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noel. And TJ and I really, really appreciate this. We're totally thrilled and delighted to accept the John Coollahan Award. You can hear the shake in my voice here. Really, really pleased. I can't see TJ, I can really see two people actually on this screen. It's quite limited, but we do appreciate the work that the panel put into reading all of the reports submitted, and we know they're available on the Scotens websites, and they will be no doubt in various journals. So we feel honoured to have been selected in the company of colleagues and peers across other institutions who've completed so many different studies and with common threads related to teacher education and quality teaching and learning. So we congratulate our fellow researchers in these other teams. We also wish to thank Scotens for giving us this opportunity to do what we love. Thank you so much, and for being so supportive throughout the process. Of course, we extend our thanks to the participants in this project, the teachers, the student teachers, the principals, the teacher educators. We also thank everyone who engaged with us as part of the consultation process along the way at various conferences and stakeholder events. On a personal note, I can't see everybody out there, but I believe my son Connor is out there somewhere. I have three special pillars in my life that I can lean upon at any point of the night or day. So Connor's one of them. So I would like to just say a couple of words, as you say, about the highlights along our journey, and then TJ will talk about how the study has advanced to a point where we hopefully can give something back to the sector. We promise to keep it really, really short. So the highlights, well, that's where I return to the participants. We had such fun. One of the most enjoyable aspects of our work was our engagement with colleagues from the sector. Coming together with practitioners in the sector was a sheer delight. you forget that you're an Irish medium teacher really at heart. And working with these principals, these leaders, and newly qualified teachers and student teachers, you know, some of them, they haven't had a lot of professional development recently. There is a dearth of professional development. And more than one commented on the fact that this was the richest professional development that they had received in a long time. This engagement in professional debate during these interviews. And these were rich, stimulating conversations, so much learning, two-way what was going on. And the richness of data, research-informed observations made by relatively newly qualified teachers, as well as more experienced people, the challenging questions that they raised, the honesty of the concerns that they raised, the expertise that is in the sector. You know, you talked about hope earlier. Well, this just inspired us with hope for the sector. So as researchers, this was a really positive experience. And as members of the Irish medium educational community, well, it was very reaffirming. It reminded us why we chose this professional path. It kind of reignited a lot of that professional enthusiasm for the job that we could also see in the participants. Even when they were discussing things like work overload or time management issues or under-resourcement. When we carried out an analysis, a word analysis as opposed to a thematic analysis of survey data from the students, one of the top words was GRA. This is a values-driven sector, and it is such a privilege to be part of it. So then there were a lot of mini highlights as well. So for example, most of the interaction between the researchers was carried out online. So we planned from the start one full day in a very comfortable environment in Dublin towards the end of the study. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I do not rough it, that I have done that in my youth, no more. So well within our budget now, I do add, we had chosen a location in Dublin, but it turned out to be like an escape room or a lock-in room. There was no window, there was coffee on tap, and we sat there for 8 hours writing. I should add, talking, laughing, but plenty of writing. And I refer to that as a mini highlight, as a reminder of the importance of that real interaction, of that person-to-person interaction, the quality of communication, the subtleties, the final details that need to be smoothed out, that need to be agreed. That can be captured and appreciated much more by planning for at least one face-to-face meeting in addition to all the online ones. So I don't have time to share any more moments with you, and I know that TJ will share some insights into the plans for the project that are underway at the moment, and some of the work done to share our learning from this Scotens funded project. And once again, thank you so much.
Good morning, Gabriel. I'll just keep this very short, but then again, I am from Cork, and we have an issue when it comes to talking, but I'll do my very best. Look, first of all, I'm as Gabriel mentioned there, we are very much deeply honoured and grateful to accept this prestigious research award. And it acknowledges our individual efforts for sure, but underscores the collaborative spirit that is Scotens community. Again, as Gabriel alluded to earlier, you know, this was a collective endeavour, and it's testament to the support and inspiration we received from our colleagues in the Irish medium sector, North and South. So we really do want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to that sector for fostering, and indeed to Scotens, for facilitating and fostering an environment that encourages cross-border innovation, collaboration and scholarly pursuits. But I'd like to just very, very briefly mention why the really important variables that create the conditions for success. And a really important one is finding a perfect partner. It's a bit of a journey, but it's definitely worth taking. And I want to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude and indeed to congratulate Gabriel for her invaluable contribution to this project. Her expertise, her dedication and collaborative spirit have truly made her the perfect research partner, and her insights and innovative ideas have consistently inspired and propelled the project forward. But again, I'd like to thank Scotens for, making Irish medium education centre stage, and for acknowledging the wonders of immersion in the island of Ireland. But however, as we celebrate this achievement, let us remember that our work is not done here, and there is much more to explore and discover in the Irish medium education sphere, north and south. And we are eager to continue contributing to the advancement of knowledge in that field. So because of this Scotens project, our current work stems from this project. And as you've heard tonight, we identified the essential immersion specific values and knowledge domains and pedagogical practices demanded by the Irish medium sector. And the project was very much rooted in the deepest commitment to quality teaching and learning for all. So based on the findings, we have now designed an extensive rubric, or we're struggling to find the perfect word, but it's a rubric for the time being, a framework, a tool to stimulate teacher reflection, evaluation and development, and indeed to cultivate further a shared island vision for empowering Irish medium immersion teachers. So the immersion specific competencies consist of 3 overarching themes: vision and values, immersion teacher knowledge, and pedagogical skills and practices. And these themes offer comprehensive depictions of what exemplary teaching practices are. And within each theme lie various domains, each composed of several elements. And this was all generated from the Scotens research project. So at the moment, we have devised or crafted this tool, and to validate it further, we have shared it online with all Irish medium teachers, north and south, inviting feedback and recommendations. We've also invited feedback from immersion teacher educators, north and south, and we are consulting with an international expert in immersion education to further enrich and validate this work. So our aim is to incorporate feedback as appropriate, and to ensure that this rubric is valid, to ensure that it's a tool that is relevant to all Irish medium educators, that it's useful and authentic, and indeed accessible and clear in language and style, but most of all, that it's research informed and practice oriented to enrich teacher professional growth in immersion, north and south. So, as we know, a continuous renewal of core competencies informed by research and practice is critical for the teacher profession, and indeed Irish medium teacher development, professionalism, and the mastery of adaptive and transformative change. And a tool like this, or a rubric, or a framework tailored to the demands of the sector, can serve as a powerful force for enhancing quality instruction, promoting professional growth, and ultimately improving outcomes for students learning through a language on the island of Ireland. And all this has been made possible because of our Scotens project. So we hope to build further in this project and really create meaningful impact and change for the sector. So gur míle mágaibh Scotens agus Hamid Arbísh ar fad Gwil an Dúsha Bruntaring Dargrid Ibra. Míle buechas.
Thank you so much, Gabriel and TJ. And it's really heartening for us as a Scotens committee to hear not just of how well you collaborated during the project, but also that in the true spirit of Scotens, that collaboration is continuing, and it is seed funding, and it is meant to lead on to other collaborative projects. And it's really exciting to hear what you've just told us, TJ, as well. So we wish you every success in the future in terms of the collaboration around this really important area. So well done again. Congratulations to you both. I'm conscious of time, and I feel I really need to hand on to Kathy and Maria, who are going to lead the next part of our agenda, which is the seed funding Q&A. So thanks very much.
No, thanks very much. Myself and Kathy, for the next, we have 10 minutes or so to I suppose, open it to the floor, for want of a better word. It's the online medium is so different, but please, if you have any questions, if you're able to turn on your microphone, please do. We'll do our best to go into the Q&A and the chat function as well. But for those people who are considering applying for seed funding, or if you have, we've already seen some questions in the Q&A and in the chat, and they've been really, really helpful to help us see where you're coming from. But if you're happy to put on your mic, just pop up your hand or whatever. We'd be delighted to take any questions from you. And we'll have a look at the Q&A as well to see. Penny, or that call for that cup of tea or coffee could be quite strong at the moment at the end of a very long day for you. And so please don't feel under pressure. But if you have, we're more than, and sometimes the question you have actually could be something that's on someone else's mind. So you could really be helping somebody else by asking. If you have, in the meantime, what we would say, that the website is very helpful. You know, the brief there, the guideline documents are there as well for you. You have, you know, you can download the form, go through it, etc. Look at previous projects. But if you have something specific, Kathy and myself are more than happy to answer them for you if you'd like to ask us anything.
I mean, just thought, what if people are putting a question to us, that's great. But I suppose in a way, nothing teaches as powerfully as an example. And we've had the examples over the evening. And I had a couple of little notes of things that maybe would crop up. But actually, they've all been ticked off in a way because they were mentioned in various ways by the various speakers who are basically telling us what is important in submitting an application. Everything was more or less covered, but we're here. So if anybody has any questions, of course, we'll take them.
Something may not come in and we won't keep you, but were there any points in particular that you jotted down, Kathy, that you'd like to share with us?
Well, one thing is, I thought that people would be interested in how are the judgments arrived at, yeah. And the idea of the committee was mentioned and all of that. But I just jotted down some of the criteria that are used, and I mean, anybody here or anybody listening could come up with this themselves. There is nothing really that is a surprise. But one thing is being methodologically sound. You know, people talked already about contributing to the field, knowing what the field is, what immersion education or whatever it is, what is the focus and what do we know already about that field. That seems to be very important, that people would come with some kind of understanding of what is already known and how am I going to push that field forward. That there would be the methods would be, people talked about the feasibility of the methods, and somebody said don't be overly ambitious. Very important that it will get done if it's reasonable within the ambit of the resources that are available. And often there is some kind of contribution in kind from the respective institutions, which is an added bonus, of course. And then a good dissemination plan, you know, who is going to benefit and how are you going to reach those people for whom it's relevant. And of course, the ethics is always a vital issue. So that was kind of the methodology. And then the capacity building that people talked about already. You know, it was lovely, the kind of relationship, the perfect partnering between Gabrielle and TJ. I mean, clearly that was a fabulous working relationship. And that capacity building inevitably leads to sustainability. So it's not just for the period of the project, but what might happen beyond it and how sustainable and going forward. We can hear the excitement for immersion education and all the research that needs to be done and how it will happen. So that's another, you know, is there a potential for sustainability and for extending the collaboration in some way? Because in that sense, it's meant to be seed funding that might grow something bigger than itself down the road. And the other thing I had, Maria, was I mean, again, it's the North-South mutual understanding. That is absolutely fundamental, and that has to be there. You know, you have to have a partner from the South, you have to have a partner from the North, you have to have that connection. And then some of the procedural things like signing off properly by heads of school or finance people. Value to the users, knowing who your users are and their contribution, and, you know, will they see it as a quality outcome? Will they value it? That's really important, and that's a criterion that would be used by the people making the decision. And the other thing is value for money. Even though the funding is very small, it is amazing what people have done, and all you need to do is look at some of the examples, what people can do with a small amount of funding, some of the theory building, some of the quality of the empirical work, some of the kind of new ideas and new questions that are put forward as a result of a study. We've seen that time and time again. So that's the value of it. And what else might I have done? I think that's more or less it. Oh yeah, just a small point that I hadn't thought of, and I made a note of it. and I think it was Gabrielle talked about, do you have more than 2 people? And I think it's an interesting one. But the big issue that it raised is some risk assessment, to be aware of maybe the risks, might be about, will these people actually cooperate in my study and complete the questionnaire, or be willing to be interviewed, or turn up, whatever. So that sense of an appreciation of the risks that are involved and any dilemmas that could be encountered, and what might be a possible solution should those problems arise. I think that's more or less it.
Kathy, that was great. That was really helpful. And maybe I just see one last Q&A after popping in there, and maybe we could close on this one because it might resonate with other people. Jane, thank you very much. It was great that you popped that in there for us. But sometimes you may have somebody who is not in Jane's particular situation, she's not based in a higher education institute, and that. So how can she get involved, or how can you actually link in with that besides the website, etc.? And again, what I would say would be, if you just tune in to see to a degree to what Kathy said there, it's about, you might have a wonderful idea, but it's about how can you link in with one of the institutions or one of the organizations and say, this is something I'm really interested in. Could I potentially work with you? And then to that, link with a northern partner and see. So I would say on the website, you'll see all the organizations and institutions that are there, and that, contact one of the ones where you feel you might be a good fit with, and see, there always will be ethical issues about working with people outside an institution and so on and that. But I would say approach one of the institutions or organizations and have a chat with somebody there and say, this is my area of research. This is what my PhD was in. This is what I'd like to do. Or perhaps go back to the institution where you did your PhD in, and maybe there would be somebody there that might be able to help you. I'm conscious of the time, so I don't want to labour it. Jane, I don't know if that was helpful or not. I hope it helped you a little bit with it. And is there a preferred, Sabrina? No, Sabrina, not at all. There isn't a preferred methodological approach. Whatever you feel, as long as it's a valid and a sound methodology that you're using. Variety is the spice of life. And if you look across the various projects, the methodologies are hugely, hugely varied. And that's, so no, not at all. Kathy, I can't think of anything else. If there's anything for you.
Yeah, there's nothing else. I don't think there's anything else that is vital at this time. So we just encourage people to apply, and especially the last person who asked a question there, Maria, might be a new person who wants to engage, and there would be an interest in involving new people who have not applied before, and for them to become active in Scotens through bidding in that way.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think we'll hand it over to Pamela, who's going to close the session now. So again, Kathy, thanks very much, and thanks to everybody for the questions. They were great.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Kathy and Maria, for the excellent advice and guidance that you've provided this evening. So we have reached the final part of the session, and I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all the panel members for sharing their experiences and projects to motivate the attendees to apply for seed funding. So TJ, Gabrielle, Jill, Jean and Maria, you did a superb job this evening, and thank you so much for your valuable insights and advice. A huge thank you also goes to Professor Linda Clark for launching the Scotens annual report, and it was lovely to hear from you again as part of the Scotens family, and to see you back with the rest of us. Thank you to the judging panel for reading all the reports submitted for the John Colohan Award, and congratulations again to our two worthy winners, Gabrielle and TJ, for your timely report on Irish medium education. A big thank you to my fellow Scotens committee members, Julie, Shauna, Maria, Kathy, Noel, Gabrielle, Lorraine, Nuala, Maureen and Tracy for your input both this evening and also behind the scenes. And a huge thank you to our funders and to Tricia, Lisa and Anthony from the Centre for Cross-Border Studies for promoting and organising the event and ensuring everything ran smoothly this evening. And last but not least, thank you to everyone for attending tonight. I do hope that you feel confident and inspired to submit a bid for seed funding. Maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe it's something that you're going to put on your to-do list. But just remember, you find your perfect partner in that matching service section of the website. And if you're looking for a new contact, either north or south, people are willing to get involved. So just reach out, make those contacts. We're very friendly and very helpful. So thank you to everyone for your time. Have a great night and goodbye.